The sun rose over the skyline, bouncing off the glass windows of the towering skyscraper. Inside, hundreds of workers rushed in, carrying coffee cups, laptops, and phones pressed against their ears. In the middle of the chaos, David pushed his cleaning cart quietly through the lobby. He wasn't the kind of man who demanded attention. Wearing a faded blue uniform, his hands covered in gloves, he moved with steady patience, mopping the marble floors until they shone like mirrors. To some, he was invisible. To others, he was just the janitor. But to David, this was more than just a job. This was a test, a chance to learn, a role he had chosen, even though no one else knew why. It was 8:30 a.m. when the sharp click of expensive shoes echoed across the lobby. Mr. Collins, the building's general manager, strutted in like he owned the place. Tall, with slicked-back hair and a suit too sharp to be comfortable, Collins had a smile that never reached his eyes. He spotted David mopping a corner of the floor and smirked. "Figures," Collins muttered under his breath, just loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Always someone like you, cleaning up after the real workers." A few employees shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. David didn't reply. He dipped his mop back into the bucket, wrung it out, and kept working. But Collins wasn't finished. "Hey, janitor," he barked, "make sure you don't leave streaks this time. You people are always so sloppy." David paused. His jaw tightened. For a second, but he kept his calm. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. Despite the disrespect, David was kind to everyone else. When a young intern dropped her stack of papers, David rushed over to help gather them. "Thank you," she said softly, embarrassed. David smiled. "Don't mention it. We all need a hand sometimes." In the break room, when he saw an elderly receptionist struggling with a heavy water jug, he lifted it onto the dispenser with ease. "You didn't have to," she started. "I wanted to," David replied warmly. Moments like these made David beloved by many of the workers, but they were too afraid of Collins to speak up when they saw the way he treated David. Collins seemed to take special pleasure in making David's life miserable. If a trash bin wasn't emptied fast enough, Collins would shout at him in front of others. If the floor wasn't spotless, Collins would sneer, "Is this the best you people can do?" One day, during a staff meeting in the lobby, Collins made a cruel joke. "You know, we should give Employee of the Month to our janitor here," he laughed, pointing at David. "He works harder than all of you. Shame he'll never be more than a mop and a bucket." The crowd chuckled nervously. David simply bowed his head, refusing to let the insult break his dignity. But the breaking point came one rainy Monday morning. David had just finished polishing the lobby floor when Collins stormed in, clearly in a foul mood. His shoes squeaked against the wet floor. He slipped slightly, and his temper exploded. "Are you kidding me?" Collins shouted. "You trying to kill me? Look at this floor. It's dangerous. You're incompetent. I've had enough." Dozens of employees froze, watching the scene unfold. Collins stepped closer, his face twisted with disgust. "You're fired," he spat. "Pack your things and get out. People like you don't belong in a building like this." Gasps rippled through the crowd. David set his mop gently against the cart. He looked at Collins for a long moment, calm, steady, unbroken. Then he simply said, "As you wish." And with that, he walked out of the lobby, leaving Collins smirking in victory. For a moment, the lobby was silent. Employees exchanged uneasy glances. Some felt guilt. They had seen the unfair treatment but never spoke up. Others felt relief. It wasn't them on the receiving end. Collins straightened his tie, puffed out his chest, and announced, "Let this be a lesson. Do your jobs right, or you'll end up just like him." But little did Collins know. The man he had just humiliated wasn't who he thought he was. David carried a secret that would turn the tables in ways Collins could never imagine. David stepped out into the rain, the city's noise swallowing him up. His uniform clung to his body, soaked and heavy. People passed by without a glance, umbrellas shielding them from the storm. But inside, David wasn't broken. He wasn't defeated. He was patient. As he walked, his mind replayed every insult, every humiliation. The sting of being called "you people." The laughter of his co-workers when Collins made him the butt of a joke. The sting of being fired in front of everyone. David took a deep breath. This was the moment I was waiting for, he thought. Days earlier, David had been sitting across from his father in a quiet study. His father, Mr. Johnson, was a self-made millionaire, a man who had worked his way from poverty to power. He had recently purchased the corporate tower where David worked. "Son," his father had said, "before you take any seat of power, you must understand the people who serve under you, not just the managers, not just the executives, but the workers, the cleaners, the invisible people." David frowned. "You want me to be a janitor?" His father nodded. "Yes, wear their shoes, carry their burdens. If you can endure the disrespect, if you can keep your dignity even when others try to strip it away, then you will be ready. Power means nothing if you don't respect those at the bottom." And so David agreed. 6 months undercover as a janitor, to learn, to see, to understand. The job wasn't easy. His back ached from bending, his hands rough from scrubbing. But the hardest part wasn't the labor, it was the way people looked at him, like he was invisible, like he wasn't worth a greeting. Sometimes employees would bump into him without an apology. Others would leave their trash scattered, knowing the janitor would clean it up. Yet David stayed patient. He smiled, he helped, he served. Because he knew the true test wasn't in cleaning floors. It was in cleaning away the pride that often blinds people to humility. Among all the workers, only one man truly despised David, Mr. Collins. Collins loved power. He loved being feared. And he loved reminding others of their place. Every chance he got, he made David feel small. If David greeted him with a good morning, Collins would sneer, "Don't talk to me unless you're told to." When David accidentally bumped a chair during cleaning, Collins snapped, "Useless. You can't even push a mop without causing trouble." The insults stung, but David's father's words echoed in his head. "Dignity is your greatest shield. Let no man steal it from you." So David endured. Not with anger, but with quiet strength. Despite Collins's cruelty, David wasn't alone. A few kind souls noticed his goodness. There was Maria, the elderly receptionist. Every morning she'd whisper, "Don't let him get to you, David. You're better than him." There was Rachel, the young intern. She admired how David never lashed back, even when publicly humiliated. "You're stronger than all of us," she told him one day, and there was Mark, the security guard, who once said, "Man, I don't know how you do it." If Collins spoke to me like that, I'd lose my job in 5 seconds. David simply smiled. "One day," he said softly, "the truth will come out. Collins wasn't just racist. He was greedy. He skimmed money from budgets, cut corners on safety, and pocketed the difference. He treated employees like tools, disposable and replaceable. Whenever someone complained, he brushed it off. No one cares about janitors and receptionists. If they quit, we'll find more." Collins believed power made him untouchable. He believed money made him superior. But he was wrong. When Collins fired David that rainy morning, he felt triumphant. He strutted through the lobby, proud of his cruelty. To him, it was just another day of proving dominance. But what he didn't know was that this single act of hatred would soon expose him, because David wasn't just a janitor. He was the rightful heir to the building. And tomorrow, Collins would stand in the presence of the man he had humiliated. Not as a superior, but as a condemned man facing justice. The tables were about to turn, and when they did, Collins would wish he had treated David with the respect every human deserves. The morning after his firing, Collins strutted into the building with extra pride. He felt unstoppable. The janitor was gone. Order had been restored. But as he reached his office, his phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Collins frowned. The board rarely called sudden meetings, but he wasn't worried. He was sure. They wanted to discuss his excellent management. He straightened his tie, grabbed his leather folder, and marched toward the top floor. The boardroom was filled with executives in sharp suits, whispering nervously. At the head of the table sat the CEO and several board members. But what caught Collins's attention, froze him in his tracks. Sitting calmly at the far end, dressed in a tailored black suit, was David. Not in his janitor uniform, not pushing a mop, but sitting tall, confident, and dignified. Collins blinked, certain his eyes deceived him. What is he doing here? Collins snapped. That's the janitor I fired yesterday. The room went silent. The CEO cleared his throat. Mr. Collins, I think you owe Mr. Johnson some respect. Allow me to introduce him properly. This is David Johnson. He is not just an employee. He is the co-owner of this building and the son of our majority shareholder. Collins's face drained of color. His folder slipped from his hands, papers scattering across the floor. That's impossible, Collins stammered. He's just a janitor. David finally spoke. His voice was calm, deep, unshaken. Yesterday I was your janitor. Today you're standing in my building. Gasps filled the room. Executives glanced at one another in shock. Collins stumbled forward, sweat beading on his forehead. Wait, David, Mr. Johnson, I didn't mean anything by it. It was just a misunderstanding. You know how stressful management can be. David's eyes narrowed. A misunderstanding? You called me names. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Not once, not twice, but every single day. Collins's voice cracked. Please, you have to understand. I was under pressure. David stood, his presence commanding the room. No. What I understand is that you abused your power. You believed my worth was defined by the uniform I wore and the color of my skin. But today, everyone will see the truth. The CEO nodded and gestured to a stack of folders. Mr. Johnson has also brought forward evidence against you, Collins. We have reports of budget skimming, falsified invoices, and unsafe cost-cutting measures. Executives flipped through the documents, shaking their heads in disgust. One board member said, "This is enough to terminate you immediately and press charges." Collins's knees buckled. He grabbed the edge of the table for balance. No, you can't do this. I've given my life to this company. David leaned across the table, locking eyes with him. You gave your life to greed and hate. And now, it's over. Security guards entered the room. Collins looked around, desperately, but no one defended him. The same employees he had bullied now watched in silence, some even relieved. Please, David, don't do this, Collins whispered, voice trembling. I'll change. I swear I'll change. David straightened his suit jacket. It's too late. You should have changed the first time you looked at me and thought I was less than you. You should have changed when you laughed at the people who worked harder than you ever did. Today, justice changes everything. The guards took Collins by the arms. As they dragged him toward the door, David spoke one final line. Remember, this moment, Collins. You fired a janitor, but you disrespected a man, and that man owned the ground you were standing on. Collins screamed as he was pulled out of the boardroom. His voice echoed down the hallway, fading into silence. The board members turned to David with respect. Mr. Johnson, one said, the floor is yours. David exhaled slowly, finally free of the weight he had carried for months. He wasn't just the janitor anymore. He wasn't invisible. He was the man in charge. The tables had turned, and the man who thought he ruled over others had been stripped of everything. The boardroom was still buzzing after Collins's humiliating exit. Every eye turned to David. He rose slowly from his chair, buttoning his suit jacket. He looked around the room at the executives, the managers, and the employees standing in the back. "Some of you," David began, his voice steady, "only ever knew me as the janitor. You walked past me without a glance. Some of you laughed when I was mocked. And some of you quietly showed kindness." He paused, his gaze softening as it landed on Maria, Rachel, and Mark. "To those who treated me with dignity, thank you. You showed me what true respect looks like." Then his tone hardened. "But to those who judged me, those who thought I was beneath you, remember this: you never know who you are speaking to. You never know the battles a man is fighting, the worth he carries, or the truth he hides." The room was silent, hanging on every word. David stepped closer to the long glass window overlooking the city. He spoke not just to the board, but to every person listening. Respect isn't something you give only to those in power. It's something you give to everyone, from the CEO in the top office to the janitor mopping the floor, because dignity is universal. And when you strip it from others, you strip it from yourself. Employees in the back nodded, some with tears in their eyes. They had witnessed cruelty. They had felt the silence of fear. But now, they were hearing truth. The CEO smiled proudly. "Mr. Johnson, as co-owner, what do you wish to do moving forward?" David turned, his voice strong and clear. "From this day on, this building will be different. Every worker, no matter their role, will be treated with respect, and those who abuse their power will have no place here." A wave of applause filled the room. For the first time, the workers felt hope. They weren't invisible anymore. Later, as David walked through the lobby, employees greeted him warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson." "Congratulations, sir." But David only smiled and said, "Please, just call me David." Because deep down, he would never forget the months he spent as just the janitor. Those months taught him humility. They taught him patience. And they gave him the chance to prove that character is greater than status. And so, the man who was once humiliated for his skin color and uniform became the man who inspired a building to change forever. This was David's story, a story of injustice, patience, and ultimate redemption. Let it remind us all: respect everyone, value everyone, because the tables can always turn. If this story touched you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Share it with a friend who needs inspiration today. Here on DreamTales 365, we bring you powerful stories of struggle, justice, and hope every single day. So don't forget, subscribe now for daily stories.